Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Today we'll be covering email newsletters and how you can manage them, and then also how you can use Feature.fm to help with your email strategy. I wanted to start off with setting a timeline for email newsletters. So generally, I like to use MailChimp um, to manage the email newsletters for the artists that I've worked with historically. Um, Everybody has their own preferred email newsletter service with different nuances that they use. I like to use MailChimp just because it allows me to be more creative with the HTML templates that I've built. You always want to make sure that any template that you choose is also responsive for mobile. A lot of people don't necessarily think about that when they're putting together their newsletter templates, but that's stuff that we're covering today. So if I have a release that was going to come out in June, I like to already have a strategy in place generally for a lot of the releases that I work. So I normally try to send out anywhere between 1 to 2 newsletters a month. If it's going to be in particular about a release, generally I'll do a pre-release email to announce the release dates. Then I'll do one on the day that it comes out. And then generally I do a release, like a post-release one, because I like to tie in tour dates with a lot of the email newsletters that I do. And generally I like to promote those as the piece of content outside of it. So if I'm looking at my overall marketing plan, I'll time them this way. And then I will specifically try to mention different things in each. So if I was going to be announcing my pre-release in my email newsletter, I'd put my pre-save link in here. So for that, I would just go into my feature.fm account and just click into my artist, grab my link. Now, if I'm going to be grabbing my link and I want to track something, I would go in here and grab the link from my email. This way, when you look at the Insights tab on your link, you can track the conversions. So for that, I would just grab my link and put it back in here. This way you can look at everything at once. And then for release day, you would put in your smart link, which would be the same thing because it would convert. And then post release, I would include the smart link, but I would include it to my website. I would include the one from my website so I could track website traffic to my site. So it would just be smart link with the activity tracking from my website. Generally, if I'm going to announce tour dates or include them in there, I'll want to drive traffic to my artist website where they're listed. So that's sort of like how I would set it up in a basis, obviously with the content in here being different. So for a pre-release, you could announce single release that you're working, or album or EP. For release day, release out now. And then for post-release, I would include anything in here, like any artist initiatives that you might have done for the DSPs or playlists or anything like that you might have created, but I also put in here my tour dates. In terms of content, I like to switch up the themes of every email newsletter. So like generally you have like a banner and like specific carved out sections for copy and stuff like that. You want to make sure that like social links and things like that are always in there. Now, if you're going to be talking about it, like how do you use emails to better market your releases, there's a few ways that you can do that on feature.fm. So the first and most obvious way is when you're creating your pre-save link and or your smart link, you have the option to add email collection to it. So that's this little button right here where it's just this little toggle. So if you create your pre-save or your smart link, you can go in and add this little button. That's the easiest way to collect email newsletters or emails, I'm sorry. And this would show on your audience tab, which we'll go over in a second, but making sure that this is turned on is always super easy to do, and it's really like low-hanging fruit. So if you just toggle that on, you just click save. You can do this for smart links, pre-saves. If you're using the direct website link, it won't show up, but it's a good way to just use the feature because it's just right there. Another way that you can collect email newsletters or emails for your newsletter through Feature.fm are from creating action pages. So when you set up any of these where it's like pre-save, save, stream, follow artist, you have the option as a user to authenticate through your streaming service and opt in depending on the service to give like your email information to the people that are collecting it. For me, I always like to use Spotify for that. Apple has been fickle in the past with anything that I've run before. And then also like YouTube is great as well. So if you're going to be using any of these for like email collection for your campaigns, you can set up a pre-save link and then make it specific to each platform, or you could just use the pre-save link that you already have set up that you're using general. Action pages, I like to keep really simple and keep it so that people are liking content and unlocking it. So if you're going to be using any of the action pages to collect emails, make sure that there's something like some type of Easter egg at the end of it, so they're able to use it. They're gonna want to commit an action to get a piece of content or some exclusive access. So when you say like save the track, the next step would be adding the Spotify URL that you want them to save, but then also adding a post-action destination URL or unlock. So it could be like the first 15 seconds of the music video. It could be an exclusive pre-sale for a tour that only fans that are unlocking the content can get. It's really anything that you want it to be. I always like to keep it something that's going to be super simple to manage at scale. I've seen really interesting campaigns where people have given fans like coupons for merch, given only those people that unlock the track access to buy merch items that are like limited edition or like fan experiences, any of that kind of stuff where you're enticing fans to save a track and you get their email. That's generally the exchange that I've seen historically that works really well. So for these, you can really customize these to be anything that you want. You can add the image, the title, preview URL. We've gone through these in previous webinars, but just on a very top level, that's a great way to do it. Another thing that you can do, get out of here. Another thing that you can do when you have when you're trying to really try to get more email newsletters is you also have the ability to embed landing pages on like your own website. So I always like to tell people that like the first thing that a fan should see when they go to your website, if you're going to be collecting emails, is the email newsletter sign up form. Generally, a lot of folks, like if you go to somebody's website, I'm trying to think who I could go to. If we just like look up the Weekend's website, generally you like to keep the email newsletter sign up form above the fold, which is essentially like in this area, like this area of the screen that shows when you come up. So if you're going to have email as a part of your strategy, you should make sure that it's in like the very easiest section for people to see and understand. So I know that if I click here, it's an email sign up form, and then I just fill it out and it's done. A lot of people like to put it in like the footer of their website, but it's really difficult. Nobody's going to scroll down there and you're not going to collect as many emails. So just make sure that you have it somewhere fixed. So whenever you're scrolling on the page, it's fixed in the top or bottom of the browser. So you're always going to see it. Yeah, that's just a little tip that I would suggest. The cool thing is that after you've set up all these action pages and you got them going, and you're collecting emails through your pre-saves, you're able to actually see all of this in the audience tab on your Feature.fm dashboard. So if we haven't really gone over this in any previous presentations that we've done as part of this series, but this is where all of your fan information goes. So this is all the information that's collected from doing action pages, doing pre-saves, and any of the interactive tools that we have as part of our marketing suite on Feature.fm. So here you're able to go through the information. So you'll see here, like you can break it out by Spotify, Deezer, Apple, YouTube, or just people that have subscribed in that little button that I showed where it said stay tuned, people that have just straight subscribed for it. So you can actually uncheck these. And when you do that, you'll see like just the ones that apply for the ones that are selected. For the services where we can tell if they have a subscription to the service, you can break it out by free, paid, and then if the information is just not available, you won't find it. Generally, I see not available for like email subscribers or like if you're doing an action page on YouTube, just because Google won't share that information willingly. You're also able to break out this information by the artist folder. So if you're managing more than one artist folder, you can click on a specific folder that you want to select from your campaigns. So if I just wanted to select my client, Justin Timberlake, don't we all wish? You would then find all the information that you've run for him using any of the suite of tools that we offer. So the really cool part about this that makes it really, really a 360 suite, in my opinion, is the ability to export. So the difference between just an email list and a segmented list is based by certain data parameters that you're trying to reach. So if I just wanted to reach the people that had given me their email address through Spotify, and I wanted to run a specific email newsletter that was targeted to just these people, I would then export this and then import it into my MailChimp account, and I would name it like Spotify users. You're also able to save this as a segment on here. So I'll say Spotify users. And then when you click on these sections up here, you'll be able to see that like these are all of the Spotify users in mass for all of my artist folders. If you want to just do, let's just say you want to do Spotify, Deezer, and Apple for a specific artist folder, you would just click on them in the drop-down menu, and then you would just click Save Segment, and then you could create a new segment, or you could update a segment that's already created. So if you want to create a new one, you can just say Mumford & Sons Spotify, MS Spotify. And then you'll see here, like, these are the Spotify users for just Mumford & Sons that I've collected on Feature.fm for Spotify, Deezer, and Apple. When the purpose of segments is to be able to visually make shortcuts, in my opinion, that's how I use this. If I was just going to use this for one of my artists, I would just export this. Make sure also when you're exporting that you're exporting it for the artists that you're going to be sending the emails to, because you don't want to do a mass export and then import them into like every single artist list that you have if that person that was authenticating and giving you permission wasn't a fan of an artist. That is a rights violation for GDPR. We are GDPR compliant, so there's nothing to worry about there. So once I have this set up, I would then go in here and open the information. And you can see here the data breakout. So this is all the information that I've exported from my audience tab. You can see here like where it came from. So YouTube through the widget email, where you just get the email address. Spotify, so I know this is the username, this is their email, this is where they came from. Like I said, some users won't give you all of their information, some will. There's a bunch of stuff that's collected. It'll break out into the subscription type if that's an option. It'll also tell you the country. It'll tell you what artist folder it came from, what the web URL is for that profile, and then other information that it allows you to have. This is a great way to just sort of get a really good look at your artist data in a real world application. What you could then do with a lot of this data is really up to you. You can segment it and reach out to fans that you just want to reach who have clicked on through the listening service to Spotify. You could reach all your fans on Apple Music that the artist has wanted to reach. If you have a Spotify playlist and you want to be marketing that, you could reach out to fans that have listened on Spotify. It's really, really up to you and what you want to do with it. And for a lot of these campaigns that we've run, a lot of it is really just like switching on the toggle switch for the email newsletters. It's making sure that like your website is optimized, like I said before, for like having that email newsletter button. It's also the value of an email is something that you control as an artist. So it's really easy for you to be able to like reach 1,000 people if you collect 1,000 emails, and there's no intermediary in between you and the service that you're using. Yeah. So I think this is probably going to be the shortest webinar that we have, because there's a lot you can do with emails, but it's really subjective. And for strategies, I really like to set my release strategy around what I'm doing. So if I have this type of thing, this is what I'm going to cover. I would break out the types of content that I'll cover. So I'll announce the single release. I'll announce the pre-sale for my tour with a coupon code exclusive to fans. I'll do a release day newsletter with the release out now. Putting in like little Easter eggs in email newsletters does increase the open rate, I find, because fans will expect to get that information from an email. Back in the day, a big service that a lot of people use that sort of sparked the trend for this type of service and really advocating for the value was Topspin, where you would have an email sign up widget and you would get MP3 in exchange for an email. So for these types of things, I like to always make sure that there's something in the newsletter that like fans will get, that they'll want to open it, rather than like going to your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or your website even. Really, newsletters should be sort of looked at almost as like fanzines, in my opinion, where you're giving fans exclusive updates or exclusive access for things. So like for release day, I would put in here like an Instagram live announcement that I wouldn't put anywhere else, that just fans that see this will get, and then people will start talking about it online. For the post-release newsletter, I'm a big fan of doing track by tracks by artists, where they talk about like the making of the track and then putting that into the post-release newsletter. So like having them like handwrite it or record liners for the track by track and then putting it in here so fans can listen to it. Is really just like the best way that I've sort of seen this type of thing done. Yeah, so I think I could take some questions right now to answer any strategy questions or anything like that before I get into the next section. The first question was, are there any data privacy issues to consider with exporting these emails and adding to your email list? There isn't, because when a fan authenticates through the platform, they actually are hit with a screen that asks them if they want to give you that data. So you don't have to worry about this not being GDPR compliant. We are. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Which Feature.fm plans allow you to export fan email? There's a few. I would suggest looking on the website at the pricing page and seeing which option fits what you're looking for. Whether you're an artist or a label is going to depend on the pricing that I would look at. So for some really sort of great ideas for campaigns, one that I had in particular that I was going to show as an example for today was like, if I want to increase the emails that I have currently. So generally when you're looking to grow an email list, you either have none and you have never had an email strategy before, or you're somebody that has had an email sign up form on your website and you've just never thought about how you're going to use that, other than like, I have a new merch item dropping, so I'm just going to send it out to all of my fans, and really not thinking of it as like a social platform for you to use really to your benefit. Um, a lot of people I've seen use email newsletters just sparingly. I like to make sure that generally before I start a release cycle, I'm emailing at least once or twice a month. The types of things that I would cover in a newsletter are playlists done by artists. So every quarter, I generally advise artists that I work with to update their playlist that they control on Spotify. Also, getting updates from the studio for an artist that's making a record. That's a great way to keep this as like a one-to-one platform. Doing like community or something like that where you're actually texting fans is a different approach. I like to think of email newsletters as sort of like you're writing a letter to your fans. That's why somebody generally wants to hear from you once or twice a month. There are ways that you can attribute value to fans. So like if a fan has bought a piece of merch and you're trying to figure out like the top 100 fans that you want to sell like a box set to, you can do those types of strategies, but you're going to have to already have some type of email strategy in place. So like I said, I like to do once or twice a month for sending out an email newsletter. I like to do playlists, getting updates from the studio when they're making a record. I like to do like live stream announces in here. So if you're gonna do like a quarantine, if you're gonna do like a quarantine thing and you want to do a live stream, I would announce it first to my email newsletter. Email newsletters are vastly underrated, and a lot of people don't really put value in it. They just sort of send out an email blast, like I said before, like when they have a release or tour dates coming out. If you're using the Feature.fm platform, like there's certain things that you can do. So if you were gonna send out an email newsletter for like the first time and you had a playlist done by your artist that's like, I don't know, like a summer 2020 playlist, you could go into Feature.fm, you could create an action page for it where you're going to, we can put it in an existing artist. You can just put it into any of these, into one of your artist folders, you create an action page, and then what you could do is you could select Spotify, you could select follow user playlists, then put in the playlist link right here, follow on Spotify, and then I would say, hey, thanks for following the summer 2020 playlist. Then you could go to like include a post action destination URL or unlock. I would put something in here that's cool, like maybe like a 20% off coupon or something like that for merch. Then you could put in here like also follow an artist and put in the artist's profile that you want them to follow. And then this is where the collect email addresses come in. So you're able to like select this little toggle box and it'll collect more emails if it goes outside of your email newsletter. But if you're going to create an action page, you should make sure that you're selecting this little box. For this purpose, you could select add action. Let me find this on. We'll select after hours. Go back to Feature.fm, put in the Spotify URL to follow, and then you just click add action. And then you would just take that link. We'll just take one from here. And then I would just put that link into making sure that you select the email and for tracking for the insights, and then just putting that in here as the link that I would use. If you're doing getting updates from the studio when you're making a record, you'll need to host that content somewhere if it's not just like a written update. So I would just go back and create a link on the platform and then use like the direct to website if you have like a blog or something like that. I'm using a lot of these like different channel variations because you can keep track of your traffic this way. Also, one really cool thing that you can do if you're doing like the pre-save and the release day and the post-release as part of like an overall artist strategy, you can add in the activities tracking. So it's pre-save email is the link that is embedded inside of the email form. I think that's a great way of using this. Yeah, this is the type of stuff that I would use. Direct links, that kind of thing. Email newsletters, there's a lot you can do. I can answer some more questions from you guys. The first question says, any strategies for smaller independent artists looking to gain emails? Should we consider trying to get fans contacts in exchange for things like merch giveaways or something? Um, I think that doing merch giveaways is sort of a lazy strategy, and I would try to come up with something a little bit easier to manage. I would try and do something like the first 15 seconds of a video, or something that's a little bit more enticing. Like if you're a smaller independent artist looking to gain emails, the best way to do that is by running action pages. A lot of people use a bunch of different platforms for whatever reasons they feel that one suits them best. I would try to give away like a song or like a video or some type of I'm a big fan of like doing like exclusive access to the artist. So if I was going to get an artist, if I wanted to do an artist email in exchange for something, like as a fan myself, I'd want it to be either an exclusive merch item that's a limited edition or a pre-sale code for tours. That's a great way for growing your data, like your database for emails. Is like, I'll only give pre-sale codes for the first 24 hours to the fans that are already on my email list. Stuff like that I think is the best way to do it. The next question is, how do you best utilize MailChimp to categorize or organize fans based on region? Do you use tags? For MailChimp, I like to break up my email lists with the regions where I know that they're from. So for me, like I would actually name, if I was going to use Feature.fm to market a release and I wanted to be able to break it out by the geolocation where it was tagged, I would name the list like the United States and then like Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and really just like break it out that way. I get really granular with emails, as just a heads up. Every single release that I work, I break everything up by the regions that my artists' fans are the biggest in. So I look at like demographic information first, and then I break it up and I create email newsletters that are specific to that region. So a lot of people just create like an email newsletter and then they send out that email newsletter to every country and territory. But I like to make it territory specific, because sometimes if you have a release, you'll be touring in the US before you'll be touring in Europe, and the Europe dates aren't announced yet, and there's no pre-sale to announce. So you have to sort of customize the messaging. For lists and how you organize fans, that's really up to you. I don't use tags. I do it based on region. So I think that should answer that question. And that one's answered. How do you get people to add that info when they click the box to sign up? Is there a way to have the geotag automatically there, or does it infringe on any rights, require cookies? You can ask, you can have, this is, I mean, if you're going to a sign up form, like on the Weekends website in the example, you would just add a field for them to enter in their information. I like, most of the time now with the GDPR compliant stuff, you actually have to say where you're from, because they need to be able to like police those rights. I don't personally advocate for geotagging automatically, because sometimes the IP address for where somebody is accessing a website from isn't actually where they're from. So I always make sure that, like, if you have an email form and you're filling it out, you want to make sure that like a region or country is selected as like a mandatory required field for them to fill in before you accept the email address. Somebody asked, what do you suggest? I use MailChimp. That's the one that I can personally recommend. There are so many out there though, so I would encourage you to do your own research and get to your own conclusion. Um, I think that's it for questions. Yeah, so like for email strategy, like you should probably think of it more as like a social platform, and really a social platform that's one-to-one between you, the artist, and the fan. Um, Always open for like helping anybody with like email newsletters and stuff like that. Also is like a newsletter component. I like to design my own. I know that not a lot of people are like technical and stuff like that, but when you're creating your email forms in MailChimp or anywhere else um, where it's going to be like a form that you then fill in if you don't have HTML knowledge or anything like that. I always like to make sure that people have HTML knowledge. So make sure that like you brush up on those skills, because sometimes like if you're entering links and things like that, you want to make sure that they're correct. You want to make sure that like they're clean. I like to also make slight adjustments to the styling for different sections and things like that. Like email newsletter design is like its own webinar that we could do. Um, yeah, I like to make sure that like like basic like Ahref. You want to make sure that like basic like HTML, like what an Ahref is for your links. Making sure that if you're going to list tour dates, um, I like to say don't be lazy. So like a lot of people like list like the dates like this, and they'll say they're playing at like the Madison at Philadelphia, and then they'll list all of the dates, and then they'll put one link. They'll just keep going like this, and they'll list like go to artistwebsite.com and like tour, but then you're adding more work for the fan. So if you're gonna do an email newsletter and you're gonna put a tour date in and you're gonna put a pre-sale code in, and the pre-sale code is the same across every single date, make sure that you're putting in the specific date for that tour, even if it's a Ticketmaster link, even if it's an Eventbrite link where all the tour dates are listed. Make a direct link. So if you're going to make a tour and you're going to put it in your newsletter and you're going to so much trouble to like include a smart link to from feature.fm, if you're going in here, make sure that you're like creating links that are going specifically to that artist's page on for that date. So like if they're playing at the Madison in Philadelphia, put the direct link there next to it. It's not that hard, and do that for every single date on the tour. A lot of times you can lose conversions or sales because the fan has to go from the email to the artist website to the date when you could just go from email to date. So yeah, that's a tip that I like to add. Also, if you're going to be like promoting the pre-save and stuff like that in here, make sure that you make it as straightforward as possible while also keeping it in the voice. You want to make sure that you're not just like dumping really crappy copy into email newsletters. You want to make sure that it's coming from like the artist sound, make it sound intimate, make it sound interesting, that you'd want to open it yourself if you were a fan for an artist. Looks like we have another question. Do you have strategies for email marketing for the African markets? What do you know about Boomplay? Any strategies you can share? Well, Boomplay is a streaming service, which isn't really on topic for this. I don't have any different email marketing strategies based off of the continent. Um, it's really all the same. You just customize the content of the newsletter for the region that you're trying to reach. So if it is Africa and you want to, I mean, Boomplay is probably the most popular service in Africa. I might be wrong, but for me right now, that is the main focus for that region. So if I was going to make an email newsletter to reach Africa or my fans for my artists in Africa, I would put Boomplay as the streaming link that I would create on feature.fm. If I was going to go to Asia and I wanted to promote my artist's release, I would probably go to QQ or Tencent and make those types of links and put those in the release. It doesn't take a lot of work to like customize the streaming services that you're driving people to. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. There's not more for me to cover, but thank you to everybody who came today. This one's a little shorter because there's a lot of stuff that you can do for this, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. We'll do a recap of this if you want to share it with anybody else. But yeah, thank you all for coming.